Hey, and welcome to episode 51 of the Cellarcast. Can you believe it? Next week is going to be our 1 year anniversary. I think I've pretty much, I've gotten one of these out every single week for a year. It's really crazy to like go back and, when I re-uploaded all the podcasts, the first 30 something episodes to this channel when I moved everything over, I was like looking back. It kind of let me like review where it all started. I'm just thinking about like how, what I was doing a year ago and the point that I was at, and man, time flies, stuff moves. I have the windows closed. It's getting hot. It's getting hot around here and humid actually, which I'm a little surprised about. Usually don't get humid summers too often here, but it's been raining a little bit, and then there's just all this moisture in the air all day. So I don't know. Maybe I'll try and finish this one up early because I want to open the windows again. It also doesn't help that I just took a walk. I like to take a walk before I sit down to record or work on something to get the blood flowing. Yeah, I also might end early because I don't really know what I'm going to talk about today. This might be the shortest list of notes. I have like 3 things. I don't know, and it's funny because there's so much announcements in the last like week or so, and I'm just I'm so fickle. I barely understand my own fancy sometimes. I'm like, what is actually what am I interested in? Not always new stuff, but maybe that's the problem, is that all the news this week is just about the announcements for everything that's coming out, and very, very tiny sliver of that is interesting to me. Like, Starfield got announced, and it had like a 15-minute game, not announced, but had like a 15-minute gameplay reveal, and I watched like 3 seconds of it, and I was like, wait, I don't care about BioWare games. I know as soon as I say that. I've never had like an interest in BioWare games. Sort of. I played a bit of, well, maybe it's my fault. I played a bit of Fallout 4, but I just don't have much of a, I just don't really care for like open worlds. I just get really bored in them, and I know that as soon as I say something like that, you guys are gonna do what you do, and you're gonna write me like a 5,000 word essay in the comments that's like a breakdown of how to play every BioWare game and which ones I should start with for like what interests I have, and I know you're gonna do that. I'm joking. I do appreciate that stuff. Literally got one on the last episode when I talked about Resident Evil. Thank you for that. And I was aware who was Ryan Frischia. Big breakdown on how to get into Resident Evil, which I appreciate. I know that they were on sale. Lozy, you also left a comment mentioning the sale and all that, but I'm pretty tight on spending money right now, so I can't even justify like a $20 purchase. Patreon. Down the line, hey, I'll remember this big breakdown, and down the line when I want to get into Resident Evil, then I'll go back and reference it. I find it funny that you said something about like, if you have patience for old games, as if I don't use every excuse possible to talk about how much I love System Shock 1. One of the first things I did on this channel, publicly, I used it to upload a few like private videos for the blog and stuff, but publicly, I was a live stream of me playing through Silent Hill, the original on PS1. So yes, I have plenty of patience for old games. Let's see, old games with obtuse gameplay and love puzzles. Yes. I don't know how I feel about puzzles. I'd have to. Puzzles are fine. I'm okay with puzzles. I should probably push this podcast in some kind of a direction. Can you tell I'm stalling for time? Cause yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna talk about. I guess I could start off with one of the quick little news story that caught my eye that actually got quite a bit of attention. This one comes from Polygon, courtesy of Nicole Carpenter. BioWare contractors in Canada vote unanimously to form union. So essentially, this is the Keywords Studios QA. What are they? Division or? Excuse me. They're just QA. They're a company that does QA, based in Edmonton, Canada. And this article calls them BioWare. They do stuff for BioWare, but they also do stuff for, let's see, EA. They did stuff for Square Enix and Blizzard, and a couple other big AAA publishers. This team in particular, the article details, has worked on things like the Mass Effect Legendary Edition and Star Wars The Old Republic and the next Dragon Age. So, yeah, I mean, these guys, I have not heard of any significant bugs with those games, so, I mean, these guys seem to do their job, at least of reporting. Seems like they do some good work, and the impetus for this union thing was basically just that, back in March, they had a return to office order, which meant that everyone had to come back into the office, and they realized how much they were spending on just like a commute. Meanwhile, the actual working from home was apparently going pretty well. And also, they had no paid time off, which meant that if they got back into the office, got COVID, if they went into the office and got COVID, they would have to take personal days off. And this is like I don't know if other countries do this, but this seems like an American thing. Oh right, they're in Canada. Actually, I don't know how they do it in Canada. In America, a lot of companies have limited days that you can take time off of, like limited sick leave. So like, hey, if you get COVID, you only have so many days to be sick. So hopefully you only get a disease like once, or because otherwise you have to take personal days off, which is going to cut into your basically like vacation to a bunch of shit. I don't know if that's exactly how it works in Canada, but yeah, it was just like a stupid, annoying situation. So they realized that like the costs for the commute was just getting too high for a lot of people. So they decided to like form a union to just work some stuff out. Now, whatever you think about, I feel like I go over this every single time one of these stories comes up. Whatever you think about unions, I think that overall this is a pretty positive thing. I just like covering these stories because I think it's significant, especially that it's happening more and more in North America. That people, and it's just starting with all the QA workers who are maybe the most among the most neglected in game development. So I'm always glad to see people in those positions get some recognition, even if they have to form a union for it. And I hope that it spreads towards other parts of the industry. Try to keep it short because I feel like I've been over the union thing 100 times. I want to see the games industry treat its workers better, basically. So hopefully this is part of a trend that leads to more people getting treated better. That's it. Next thing. Okay, so the most significant thing that I care about is, honestly, I'm just really hyped about Street Fighter 6. Everything for this game looks really good. People have some gripes about maybe some graphical things, some art style things. Not everyone's feeling it, but I think overall, I am very, very optimistic about the direction of the game. I spent a lot of time last episode talking about from like a mechanical perspective and like an aesthetic with the art style and things, but I actually want to talk about something that I don't know if a ton of people have been mentioning it, but the attention to detail in the animations of this game. So Street Fighter V did a neat thing where certain attacks, this didn't really happen with like lights or specials, I think, but I think like mediums and like heavy attacks and stuff like that, or attacks that had a lot of follow through, would have different animations if they were blocked. So for instance, the one that always sticks out in my mind would be like Nash's like standing heavy punch, where he just does this big like left hook, this big swing from the side, and if it connects, it'll just and the opponent will just get it's a big heavy hit. But if it gets blocked, his fist just stops. It just stops like right on the opponent's block, and you really feel that like that big halt in momentum. It's one of those like big moments of like, fuck, I'm negative, I'm minus. And they seem to be pushing that kind of attention to detail way further, like way beyond what is necessary or what like almost any other 2D fighting game does. So like characters have different animations depending on, so if they get hit, they have different animations if they get hit mid or low, maybe even overhead. They have different block animations depending on whether they get hit mid or low, from standing or crouching, I think. One thing that I noticed with the parry mechanic, so parrying is just kind of like, you kind of like hold it, essentially. You go and you'll parry multiple strikes and all that. There are multiple animations for parries depending on which side the attack is coming from. And I don't mean like in front of or behind the character. I mean like, how would you say, like in universe, the left and the right. So like for instance, there's a clip in like the trailer that you can see, and you can find gameplay backing this up, where like Jamie, he like jumps in on Luke, and Luke basically parries everything in this whole sequence. So Jamie jumps in, he does like a jumping attack, lands, does a low, and then like two like standing attacks, two like standing punches. So Luke parries the jump in, parries the low, and when he parries the low, he does it with like his ankle. He kind of like rolls Jamie's like foot away. Then when Jamie stands up to do two strikes, Jamie strikes like once with his left arm, and Luke parries it. He like redirects the movement and everything. He parries it with his right arm. So the one on that side, and when Jamie strikes with his right arm, Luke parries with his left arm. There's actually like, the characters actually parry like the side of the attack that it's which has no gameplay implication. Like there's no left right in that way like there is in like Tekken. Left right in 2D games is essentially like in front of or behind the character. That's literally just like a Z-axis thing. Is no bearing on gameplay, no impact. It's just like a little detail that makes it look like the character is literally knocking away the attack as it's really coming at them, which is so nice. It's like so unnecessary. There's different animation. The loading screens are cool to get into a fight. So like the character select is like the characters in this like graffitied up garage. There's this garage door behind them. They have Chun-Li's. This is so neat. Chun-Li's. When you hover over her in the character select, the model like loads up and she's sitting on these two suitcases, which is a reference to a classic piece of like official art of Chun-Li. She's doing that. She's sitting on like these two suitcases with like these stickers all over them from her travels, and she's like adjusting her boot. And that her character select pose directly references that, and then when you select her, she stands up and gets into her stance and everything. But when the characters are both selected, the garage door behind them like rolls up, and there's this like blinding white light, and there's this whole sequence where they walk out into this like dingy dark garage with all this pink, like reddish pink and blue lighting, which is the player 1 and 2 colors. And there's details in this little walkout scene that change depending on which stage you're going to. So like there's only 2 stages that we know of so far, or that were shown off, or that were like that have been in like playable builds at least. One of which is like Ryu's stage, which has this big cherry blossom tree in the back, and the little walkout scene, if you're on that stage, the like branches of the cherry blossom are like poking in like from the sides and everything. And both characters have different animations depending on whether they're on the player 1 or 2 side. Like when they're walking out, they'll just make different motions to the camera or whatever, depending on their personality and all that. There's that whole thing where the actual like loading screen of the game, so like that the whole walkout sequence is all skippable. The loading sequence is both characters like doing this little face off of just their heads kind of mugging at each other. And this was like the thing that I guess as probably most people know about, even if you haven't been following the game. Most people have heard of. I don't know. Most people maybe haven't heard of this, but if you've been somewhat close to it, you might have seen this because it's great meme material. There's a thing where you can like press a direction during this like little face-off screen, and the characters will make different expressions. They'll make different expressions when you hit the like up, down, left, or right. Like they'll like grimace, or they'll do like a pout or some kind of funny face, or some like whoa like reaction. And it's like it's so unnecessary, but it's just a little detail that is there to be fun. And I think that's honestly like the most, when I talk about the game being like encouraging or feeling like encouraged about the game or optimistic, this is honestly like the stuff that kind of underpins that. That's really like where this feeling of mine comes from. It's always nice when a developer puts something in their game that is just there to be fun. And it doesn't have to be there. It's just there to get a little like enjoyment, to kind of be amusing. A great example would be like the gold saucer from Final Fantasy XIV, which is just like when I explain the gold saucer to people, I have to be clear. Like you say like, oh, it's like a casino themed area. And then I have to say like, oh, there's no like microtransactions. There's no like additional money or anything like that. It's literally just a casino-themed area in the game that is just there to be fun. It's just a bunch of mini games and fun, like things you can do with other players, and just a ton of like surprisingly in-depth content, like chocobo races and stuff like that. And you can like breed chocobos. There's this whole complex system of like breeding chocobos and like different genetics and stuff like that. Like, there's like pet battles and triple triad is what you get. You can learn how to play that there. And just so much time put into this area, and it has no real story significance. There's like some side quests and stuff you can do there, but it has no real story significance. It doesn't drive any microtransactions. I mean, there's no microtransactions in the game once you boot the game up. It's simply a place to enjoy yourself and like do some scratch tickets and stuff for gold saucer points. Another great example that I think of is would be like Herat, which is that like Soviet kind of horror-ish themed boomer shooter that I played a little while ago. I talked about it on this podcast, which is there's just like little the game isn't even done yet. Like, it's 2 episodes, and I don't even think both episodes are completed yet, and it's all being made by like one guy. And I'm playing a level, and there's just randomly there's like a side room that has a like functioning washing machine that you can turn on, and it has a whole animation of it like rattling around and a sound effect, and you can turn it on and off. It doesn't really do anything, but it's just there. It's just there. It's just a little detail in the world to make it more of just like a stage for shooting. And that's like one of the things that's very, it gives me like a nice feeling when I play a game that has things like that. Like, it feels like the developer cares, you know? And stuff like that washing machine, yeah, it's not enough that it's good, that's something that would like take away from development. Like, it's a superfluous thing that's just sidetracking development. It's just a little detail. And that kind of thing is very, yeah, you can feel the passion. You can feel like there was a little love put into the project. And that's, it'll always give me a very optimistic look at its future, because, you know, it's always risky when you see things that feel like they're very committee designed, you know? When something's super, like, you look at something like Death Stranding, and I'm like, that's gonna be divisive, you know? That's gonna be divisive. But is it gonna be bad? Arguably. The important thing is that it's arguable, because I think that Kojima and all the people who have, you know, been working under him that are, you know, as equally part of the process, but like, ultimately that's a game only he could have made. And excuse me, without even having played it, you can tell that's a game that only he could have made. And just that like creative vision and that love that's in there, I think immediately makes it more valuable than something that was just like very just what would I call it? Very trite, very, you know, designed by committee, kind of soulless feeling. I mean, God, one of my favorite movies is fucking Wicked World, directed by Barry J. Gillis, which is a terrible film. It's terrible, and I love it because it's so. This guy, it's a perfect, like, so bad it's good movie. It's one of those. I discovered it through Red Letter Media, and I had to order I own like the Blu-ray DVD double pack or something like that. It's so, I don't even know how to describe it. It's basically this guy, Barry J. Gillis, who was like a indie filmmaker in Canada throughout the 80s and 90s and maybe even 2000s. And he made this movie called Wicked World that it's like a slasher movie that's trying to be really philosophical, but the extent of the philosophy is the world is so messed up, man. We live in a wicked world. And it's this wonderful combo of it's so low budget, it's so corny. Somehow he wrangled a ton of actors into it. And a couple really, I'm surprised by the amount of really attractive women that are in this film. And it also is like, it thinks it's being so deep. And it's making such a statement. And then the way that it does it is that there's a scene where, you know, he wants to, like, convey there's, like, a lot of crime in this area. So a character, like, just randomly walks into someone else's backyard and they offer him, like, a hot dog and start telling him about how their husband's daughters killed themselves in, like, a ritual suicide 3 weeks ago. And the entire time, just way too loudly, they've just edited in like the sounds of like gunshots and dogs barking and glass breaking and shit. Just like, hey, do you want a hot dog? It's not like a pistol, it's like full on like automatic weaponry. Just like, oh yeah, don't mind him, his daughter's killed us. You want a hot dog? And just the funniest, most surreal thing of just the way that it comes together. Like, it's terrible. It's awful. It's so poorly constructed. It has this weird, like, it's edited out of order because it's trying to be like, oh, what's really going on? Is this all in, like, this one character's head? Or is it real? What's true and what's fake? But the movie in general is so, like, incomprehensible, like, just on, like, a moment-to-moment basis, that it hardly even comes across. Like, when you do a movie like that, it's like, it's kind of important, like, if you want things to be intentionally confusing, to make the audience, like, question what's going on, you kind of need to make the individual, like, moment-to-moment bits intelligible so that you would at least have like some bearing on like how, you know, the fun part is putting together the clues. It's not figuring out what the clues are even supposed to be. And it just it fails in that aspect, but it's so, like, he believes so hard in his vision, and it just comes out as this very special product. What the fuck was I talking about? Oh, attention to detail. Just like, yeah, it's those kinds of things. Just completely unnecessary. We're talking about Street Fighter 6. Completely unnecessary, just little things that you can tell. It's the promise of passion. And that's what makes me feel good, you know? I have so little anxiety going into this game, to be honest. Like, I remember when Strive was coming out, which is a game that I like and that a lot of people like, when Strive was coming out, there was just this, like, anxiety about, like, oh, are the changes good? Because it was so radically different from the classic Guilty Gear style. And it's like, are the changes good? Is this game going to be, like, you know, worth $60 on release? Is all these things. I have none of that going into Street Fighter 6. I have none of it. And during the Summer of Gaming, they showed off the trailer for Guile, so which does his design does confirm at least that part of the leak. It is the same design. He has a goatee. He's got a goatee. If I'm gonna be honest, I think the facial hair in this game looks pretty bad. At least for, like, I think Ryu's beard looks weird and patchy. It looks very, like, looks very, like, PS4-ish, if you know what I mean. I think that could be a lot better. His eyebrows are fine, but it's just his beard is weird, and I think that'll be fixed. His eyes have a weird kind of reddish. He looks slightly high all the time. He has this like reddish kind of bloodshot look. I think most of the other characters look. I think Jamie looks great. Jamie looks like James Charles. Oh god, Jamie's like level 3 super. We finally know what the whole thing looks like. You get a little bit of it in the trailer, but it's basically, it's this crazy sequence. He like deals a couple like hits to the opponent, which like staggers them down to the ground, and then there's like a shot from behind Jamie like facing the opponent, and you see the opponent, they like look up at him and they like grimace, and then he and the opponent have this, they go in for this like they rush at each other, and then Jamie does this thing where like the opponent like throws some kind of swing or something, and then he redirects their momentum, like he basically parries and reverses their positions, and then he gets behind them and like pushes like their back in this way and puts his finger like under their throat or under their chin, and then he's just like this like my secret killing art, and then he like snaps their neck by like pushing it back. This all happens in like 5 seconds, and this whole like face-off sequence that they have, this whole standoff, goes into this like letterbox, black and white, like a final confrontation in a movie. It's so crazy looking. Yeah. Guile. He looks really good. Besides, I think giving him a goatee is fine. But like the hair, I don't know. Some of the hair just looks weird in this game so far. I hope it looks fine by the time that cool old guy JP gets shown off, because I want him to look cool. Guile's animations look really good. Someone said like, there's a comment that was like kind of popular that was something along the lines of SF6 looks, it's like watching an NRS game with good animations, which that stings. But it kind of does. Guile's stage, I'm jumping all over the place. Let me talk about Guile's animations. Guile's animations look great. I mean, he's very simple, but he's only got a couple moves. It does confirm that what I was saying last time, where they are literally just taking the V system and just giving it to characters as part of their normal moveset. So that V skill that Guile had in 5, where he could throw out place basically like energy slicer, like X thing in the air, and then he could throw a sonic boom into it and it would power it up to make it do like 2 hits. He can just do that now. That is just a move he has, and it functions like basically the same way. Excuse me, from what I can tell. It's just a thing he can do. And then his level 2 super is just his V trigger, where it's the one where he gets the rapid fire sonic booms, and it looks cool. I like the fact that it seems like there's a lot of ways in this game where you can use mechanics and abilities kind of like in multiple ways, if that makes sense. So like, I imagine like you could do a combo with Guile into like a hard knockdown, which sets you up for this level 2 like install super where you power up, and you could then use those like rapid fire sonic booms to like further your zoning, or you could like use them and then dash in and like do another rapid fire. I think you only really get like 2, but like 2 barrages essentially, and like use that in like an aggressive way. And I think that's cool. A lot more like natural launchers and things like that, and getting like big wall bounces and stuff like that. The whole combo system looks really neat. I am really looking forward to like getting in and finding a character who I like. The normals in general seem bigger, which I am a big fan of. One thing that I feel like people haven't really talked about that much. The one thing that you get that was kind of a consequence of how Street Fighter V sort of like simplified things is that in older Street Fighter games, characters had what were called proximity normals, which is essentially just, it is a normal attack that is different if you're up close to an enemy. It changes if you're like up close, basically. So characters would have like a close medium punch, close heavy punch, and then a regular, heavy punch when you were outside of that range for, something like that. So 5 did away with that, and there was only like one version of moves, and they kind of tried to find this sort of middle ground between like the regular and the close versions of normals. But what ended up happening is that a lot of the moves, and you'll hear this from a lot of people, but they won't really tie it into this change that they made, is that a lot of normals in 5 feel very stubby. They feel very like short range, even like longer attacks. Like characters do have like a few pokes, but it's very it's a much closer game because they wanted you to like engage a lot more and basically get like really close. Street Fighter V is like, it's a game of inches. That's kind of how they built it. It's a game of inches where a wrong move can get you really messed up because of how volatile like the V-trigger system is and all that, the comeback mechanics and all that, and just like how much damage some supers do. So, abandoning the close, and so what the close and the regular normals did, what having proximity normals did for older games was that you could have characters, you could actually like get sort of the best of both worlds with characters. Like you could have close range buttons that are like their own starters for combos, and then farther buttons that have maybe more range but don't lead to as much. Maybe differences in speed and all that. It basically just gave them more room to design around characters having multiple ranges, whereas 5 felt a little more boxed in, because I think they just wanted to get rid of the get rid of like a lot of the move. Maybe they considered it bloat, but yeah, Guilty Gear also does this with like close slash and far slash. That's the only real proximity normal. And interestingly enough, I mentioned a little last time talking about Woshige's potential like inspirations he took from Arxis games in regards to some of the way that he sort of designed or led the design of Street Fighter V. And one thing that who made this? I think Novril, who's a guy on the Guilty Gear community. He made a video a little while back, or when 5 was coming out, going over this. One thing he mentioned was Arxis games, the way that a lot of them tend to work is you get big starters off of like close normals. So like close slash in most Guilty Gear games for like most characters is a big combo starter. So you have to put like some kind of risk on the line. You have to put something on the line to like actually get in and do like your close slash. If you want the higher reward, and 5 kind of emulated that with a lot of combos started off of mediums. So like medium, like so many characters in 5 have, you can literally jump into like half the cast, and you can do like crouching medium punch, standing medium punch, special. That like is an almost universal combo or combo route in 5. So many characters work like that compared to 4, which had a lot more like, I don't know, you could just lights were more of an important starter in 4, you could like combo a lot of stuff off of light. You go like light into heavy, if your timing and your execution was good enough. All this to say that 5 still does not have proximity, or sorry, 6 does not have proximity normals, but the overall range of normals is just bigger, which I like characters with big normals and just big neutral buttons. So, I mean, yeah, I like Slayer's 5K and his 2H. I like Nago's Far Slash. I like Testament, just Testament's whole kit, you know. Those are the kinds of characters that I like. The big normals, but kind of like mid-range brawlers, I guess, if that makes sense. There's not a ton of consistency with what characters I like in fighting games. So yeah, I'm happy to see that. I love Guile's level 3 super. It's so, I don't know, it just looks really cool. It's what is it? He like cripples, he crumples the opponent or something, and then he like shoots a giant sonic boom at them that just, it's like angled upwards. They fly all the way into the sky, being carried by this big energy blade. He jumps up, kicks them in the head, and then with his other foot does a big flash kick in the air. It's called, what is it called? Like Sonic Crossfire or something like that. It looks gorgeous. It's a wonderful looking super, and it looks great on his stage. I was going to talk about his stage. Just a beautiful, like bright sunny day on like an aircraft carrier, or with one in the background, if I'm remembering correctly. Definitely a throwback to his stage from 2, the classic one, and this game with like bright colors, like outside of when they get out of like the dingy alleyway stage and the kind of washed out sort of desaturated kind of like Ryu stage, with just the bright colors, it looks really nice. Definitely like that stage is almost a little like extra saturated. Yeah, I don't know. He's looking good. I'm also surprised they decided to show off Guile first, I guess, after the reveal. But a welcome addition. I want to see some of the new characters, but I think that they will. If there's 20, the game's coming 2023, and most people are expecting it to release in February. Capcom just likes to release Street Fighter stuff in February. That gives about half a year, or a little over half a year. It gives about 8 months. And if there's 22 characters, there's like 17 left. So that's 17. That's 4 months of trailers if you do one a week. Plus maybe bonus stuff for the other modes and things like that. So they said they were going to go dark for a while. So what I'm expecting is we might get a couple. There might be like a prolonged period where we're getting a trailer like every week for a few months leading up to the game's release. Because there's only so much time. I mean, they got to get these characters out and shown off. And I wanted to mention, just because I think I forgot to mention it last time, but this was officially confirmed, the game will have rollback, and it is going to be the Marvel Infinite rollback, or potentially even an improved version of that. So that's what I was expecting, because I mean, there's no reason that Capcom would invest in improving the netcode for Marvel Infinite and then just ditch it. They already spent the money, and it was actually well received. So, I mean, maybe they could if they were just extremely incompetent. But thankfully, they're not being incompetent, and they are actually using it. So, I mean, honestly, even without improvements to the Infinite netcode, this game will play very well online. which will be great to see. I mean, Marvel Infinite worked well with like a crazy 2v2 game with like 100 things going on. So a 1v1 game should maybe even, experience less crazy rollbacks, or less room for big rollbacks if it's just 2 characters. So that was good news, just to get that confirmed, as I suspected. And it's going to have crossplay, which was also, I would have also been really surprised if there was not crossplay. But that's great. This game, I think, is going to be really big. I think that this might honestly be, just with like the marketing, I think just general appeal. Like, I feel like I like to get reactions from people who, are more casual. I like to see what they're thinking about it. And most of it has been, this looks cool. Even people who aren't into Street Fighter, they can at least say, that looks pretty cool. It looks pleasing. It looks appealing. I think there's a lot of casual appeal to this game, not just in like the visuals, but with the eventual single player modes that we're going to see more of. I think that there's like a good chance that this game does really well, and it's going to have a very large community. I mean, like I said, and that's good. That's good overall, having a big casual player base. More than just NRS games will have big casual player bases. Which might be weird, but it'll be interesting. It'll be neat. And I think just, honestly healthier overall. Ooh, I haven't done any stretches today. Like I said in my excuse me. In my last video, more casuals, the more of them get competitive, Most people who play a game are not going to be competitive. They're only a percentage. Let's say 10% of a player. I mean, League of Legends is one of the biggest games in the world. And I might, maybe the numbers changed around a little bit, but back when I was playing a couple years ago, from, 2014 to 2020, only like 20% of the player base of that game even went on ranked. Most people just played casuals. And of the ranked population, I want to say a good like 85 to 90% are in like the bottom like 3 or 4 ranks. Most people who play games just do not get competitive. A lot of people, they get competitive in the sense that they want to win enough that they feel like they're polishing some kind of a skill, but they don't have the insane drive to like get to the top level. That's a very rare thing, honestly. And the same is going to be true for I think just about any other competitive genre, including fighting games. And like, but if you have a larger just overall player base, more of those people are going to get in. They're going to find out they really like it, and they are going to realize that they want to get competitive, and they can get involved in their local fighting game community and all that. And it can only look good. It's looking good. I think, man, I was thinking about this last night. I mean, like, fighting games are going to get so good, dude. They're getting so good. Just the overall scene, like the bar is raising, which is nice. It's going to feel so nice to play a fighting game that doesn't feel like a budget title. That's going to be so nice, with so many fighting games that come out. One of the most frustrating things is they come out and play it. I like the gameplay, I like the characters, I like the visuals, I like all this stuff, but you can feel the budget, and it's just one of those, I really want to be all in on this, but it's hard to recommend to people who are casual, for instance. it's going to be so nice to play a game that feels... And the reason for all this is because basically fighting games have been stuck as just arcade games for the longest time. They've been made as arcade games. To me and to a lot of other people, that just translates to a budget game. You know, if you have the perspective and the familiarity with what, you know, arcade games are like, or arcade fighting games are like, you can see, like, this is pretty clearly, yeah, this is like an arcade game that had some extras thrown on for a console release. And as Japanese developers are wont to do, they just kind of were like, yeah, that's fine. And then they said that's fine for about 10 years. And then everyone else outpaced them, including the Americans, especially the Americans. And now they're like, oh shit, we have to like do something, you know? So this game is like Capcom. It feels like they're making a statement, as I like to say. As I like to state. They're making a statement and they're saying like, this is a console game, bitch. This is a full-on game. You are literally fighting in the streets now. And that, I can only feel positive about that. It feels good, you know? Oh, I should say a fighting game that doesn't feel like a budget title. Asterisk, and the asterisk is, that's not an NRS game. Okay. Pretty much that's all that I want to talk about with 6. I mean, there's a ton of gameplay things that I could go over. Little intricacies. The game has a ton of little intricate details as to how the system mechanics work, especially the drive gauge and all that I find really interesting. They're definitely making it a more... It's a game where... I think it's funny that there's no real comeback mechanic. There sort of is. The game's basically got Hellfire from Xrd, which if you don't know, which I don't blame you, a lot of Guilty Gear players forget what Hellfire was. Hellfire was a mechanic in Xrd where when you were below like 30% health or something like that, your super did like an extra 20% damage. And it is very negligible. Supers, and that's for a few reasons. I mean, mainly supers in Guilty Gear are typically not as central as in other titles, like, you know, KOF or Street Fighter or why am I blanking? A bunch of anime games, to be honest. Supers are just not as central, just due to the way that the combo system works. It's less about ending a combo in super and more about in Guilty Gear, I mean, less about doing a combo and ending in super and more doing a combo that ends in like a knockdown and just repeating pressure. There are combos that go into super, but it's more like, oh, they happen to be in the air, they get put in the air during this combo, and then you can do the super and it'll hit. It's that kind of a thing. It's less like super central to the way the combos work, and there's so many other ways to spend your meter that it's just not it's not the only option. You'll end up using it on a lot of other things. Supers were always just like less impactful in Guilty Gear. Like, they're not like dead weight mechanically, but they're just, it's a very crowded scene for, you know, what you can spend your meter on. So Hellfire's pretty negligible. Also, Guilty Gear has like guts, which makes it harder to kill someone when they're at low health. There's a bunch of stuff that makes it just not very noteworthy. 6 has a similar thing. It's funny, they're just reusing terms now. It's called critical art, which is just what supers are called in 5. That's like the 5 specific term for a super, is a critical art. But in 6, when your health gets like below 20% or something like that, like 25, your health bar will go like yellow, and then your level 3 will become a critical art, so-called, and it gets like different properties and stuff like that. So mainly like more damage and the different animation. I think that's where Ryu gets his level 3 is the Shin Shoryuken, and when it's in critical art mode, it has this like black and white like samurai filter over it. Yeah, so bunch of little intricacies with the gameplay and stuff that I'll probably talk about when the game comes out, and there's a little more to, I have a little more hands-on experience, so come 2023 we'll have a little more discussion about it. I want to move on because I don't want to bore you guys with just me talking about this and that, and this thing works like this, and this thing looks like it's going to be like that. I want to move on to the most recent game that I played. I played and finished Warhammer 40k Space Marine. So I am a fan of Warhammer, mainly 40k just because I don't care too much for fantasy stuff. Warhammer, like fantasy / Age of Sigmar, is neat, but it's like not really my cup of tea. And I fucking love the 40k just look, the universe and the characters and all. It's so appealing to me as an edgelord, and okay, so I have like a struggle with 40k. Number one is I really like the universe, but I shouldn't say number one. It's not really like a numbered list. The struggle is that I really like this universe. I like this franchise. I think it's super cool looking, and I would like to engage with it. However, I do not have an interest in tabletop games or war games. And the game itself, the tabletop game, is absurdly expensive. It is so expensive. It's like $1,000 to get started. And from what I understand, after that like upfront investment, you're maybe spending $100 or $200, maybe $300 every year to like keep your armies and stuff updated. But like, for something that I don't necessarily have an interest in as a game, and also forces me to interacting with people. You're telling me I gotta like interact with people and like meet them in person? Ew, dude, ew. So I look to other things, which is why I read Warhammer books, and I want to play Warhammer video games. And on the video game front, most of them are strategy games, which makes sense. It's kind of a no-brainer, but I kind of want more than like a strategy tactics game. I find myself, what I love about 40k is the lore and the aesthetic and the world in general, the setting. So honestly, I would be so down for a 40k MMO. I think that could be so rad. Or I want to go on a little mini rant about this before I talk about Space Marine. 40k is perfect for a game like that's styled like Transformers Fall of Cybertron. Okay. Most people forget about Transformers Fall of Cybertron. So let me re-jog your memory. It's a damn shame. So Blue Moon Studios, who I think got screwed over by EA or something like that, they made this game called Transformers War for Cybertron. And War for Cybertron was a third-person like action game, like shooter action game based in Transformers, and it's basically about the war that goes on between the Autobots and the Decepticons on like Cybertron before they leave the planet and all that. And the way it was structured was you had 2 different campaigns, Sonic Adventure style, Sonic Adventure 2 style. You had the Autobot campaign and the Decepticon campaign. Well, they made a sequel called Fall of Cybertron, which is kind of like the end of the war, the planet's all falling apart, and that game, they decided to ditch the dual campaign, and they have a single campaign where missions switch between perspectives, between character perspectives in terms of like which character you're playing and also which side that character is representing. So, the game opens, I think, with like Optimus Prime or something. He's like your intro, and then it switches over to like a Decepticon character, and it switches back and forth for the missions, or like every other mission or something. I forget the exact like mission to mission how they do it, but essentially that's the idea. And you're always switching like what kind of character you're playing, because all the those different Transformers have different abilities and stuff. And so they'll do it like Optimus Prime is a very like all-rounder. He shoots and he has like a melee. He's like the basic all-rounder kind of character. And then you switch over to a totally different style of gameplay. You go to like, I think it's Sideswipe, and he's got like a grapple hook, and you're doing this whole sequence where he's like infiltrating this temple or factory, or it's something like that, where he's vastly outnumbered, and you've got to like stealth and like grapple hook around with like minimal like combat encounters. And like you do all this like back and forth switching in this like totally this like unbroken narrative essentially, of going back and forth between these two different sides. So it's just kind of like it's like the logical evolution of having that like dual campaign thing. Like you're actually just getting the full story, and you're just bouncing back and forth with no interruption. You actually have like a sense of time of when things are happening. And I think 40K is just it's ripe for a game like that. I mean, it would be so like you have such a great opportunity to do just a game with like, I don't know, just spitballing. You've got like, oh, there's a war because there's a battle for this planet, and it's like Space Marines versus Chaos Space Marines, and you switch back and forth, and you can maybe even throw in like a third, like one of the Xenos or something like that, and you just switch between different perspectives, and you get to go like not just Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines and the Xenos, but like different, because there's so many neat like sub factions they're all like intentionally like in the they have kind of like associated abilities and talents essentially, and like different specialties and different like types of troops that have different roles. Like you could switch to like, and you could be like Ultramarine, and you're doing like one thing, and then you switch over to like a Chaos Marine, and he's like specifically maybe like for a specific chaos god, and that god like gives him like a unique kind of like ability that he can use in gameplay or something like that. And you just you're following the story, switching back and forth as this big kind of like battle for this planet unfolds. Just like throwing ideas out there. I think I would be so down to clown with that, dude. Maybe you could bring in the Harlequins. I'd be down to clown. Playing one of them. If in case you're wondering, my favorite 40K factions are Custodes and Harlequins. And I also really like the Guardsmen. Those are the two. I like my Custodes because they're big, overpowered, golden gods. I feel like if as a playable character, I gravitate towards something like a Custodes, because they're like all melee, and they just get in, and they're like big, and they just destroy shit when they get close. I'm like, that's the kind of characters I like. And then Harlequins are cool because they're like clown jester themed aliens, like assassins, and all of their terminology and structure is based off of like they travel in like troops, and they have all this interesting, cool. I just think like jester theming is neat. Anyway, yeah. So, Space Marine, right? So back in, when did Space Marine come out? I have to double check this. Hang on. 40K Space Marine. I have to search up game because you just look Space Marine game. You'll get the general thing. 2011. That checks out. So, Warhammer 40K Space Marine is a third-person shooter based in the Warhammer 40K universe, where you are doing... basically, the setup is that there is a planet. There's an Imperial Forge world. So basically a big factory world that has... it's under assault by orcs. And this is a problem. Well, number one, just because, you know, it's a Forge world under attack. But specifically because this Forge world has Titans on it. Titans are these giant-ass mechs. Just these gigantic war machines that are fucking huge. You see one in-game, and it is massive. I'll get into the sense of scale of this game a little later. So the Empire really does not want that falling into Xenos' hands. Those filthy Xenos. So they send down a fleet of Space Marines to clean them out, and the main character is part of essentially a what is it? If I remember correctly, most of like the like main fleet, they're basically part of the Vanguard. You're part of the Vanguard that's dropping down on this planet, and the plot of the game basically unfolds over the course of about a day. So it's pretty like short time span that this is all going on in. So it basically checks out that, like, you know, you start off and it's just kind of you, and then slowly you kind of link up with some other Space Marines and stuff going on. But essentially, yeah, so it's a third-person shooter. You're a Space Marine with a small... You've got two other guys with you, two other characters, and you're on this planet shooting up orcs. Just classic Warhammer shenanigans going on, essentially. And it gets... There's twists and turns and all that, but I don't know how much spoilers I necessarily want to go into. I'll spoil... I mean, look, it's not the most complex plot. I called one of the major twists, like, as soon as a certain character popped up. But, yeah, I'll talk about a little gameplay stuff. I just don't want to spoil it, because I do think this game overall is good. I think it's good. I think it's a great Warhammer game. So this is my thing. I think Space Marine is a good Warhammer game. I don't... And a pretty good, like, video game in general. It's kind of an interesting case, because this game was very striking to me, design-wise. I said that this game came out in 2011, and you can tell it is very 7th gen. It is very 7th gen third-person shooter. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It carries... It's very of its time. It's hyper-linear. You're basically going down a corridor, a series of hallways, essentially. There's a obligatory turret section. Multiple, although there's only one that's really required. Most of them are excuse me, optional. Like, you can man the gun, but you have the option to like tear it off and walk around with it, which is very much appreciated. There's a turret section. Spoilers, sort of. The final encounter is a QTE sequence. Because that's just what you did. That's just what you did back in the 7th generation. These were one thing that I find funny. I find it's very quaint. There's all these collectibles around the world, or around the locations, that you basically get for doing like the bare minimum of exploration. There's basically a bunch of audio logs that you can find, and it'll just be like, oh, I'm in a room. Let me look around this box. There's one there. Collected it. I got most of them with, again, just doing the bare minimum of exploration, because these levels are not sprawling, and they're not terribly complex. It's very, very like point A to point B. Surprisingly so. Honestly, very jarring coming from Deus Ex. Literally, the game I played right before this was Deus Ex, which is so open. It's so open, it's almost mind-boggling how free you are to approach that game in 100 different ways. Then to go to Space Marine, which is like, you're going to walk down this corridor and there's going to be a scripted sequence. Which is fine. Before I get into that, I want to talk about... I want to get back to this audio log thing. Put a pin in that. Again, this is how you have to put up with how my brain works. The audio log thing amuses me because this is something that you don't... I feel like you don't see it as much. People back, like, only 10, let's say 8-10 years ago, they talked a lot more about replay factor or replay value, replayability. That was like, actually, this was an idea that was so important to people that a lot of like internet reviewers and people who would make like video reviews and stuff, or people who would leave text reviews for games, would include like replayability as a category that they scored out of 5 or 10 or something like that. They would include that as something that they would grade a game on, of like how many times can I replay this? How much value per dollar do I get? This was like a concept that was way stronger back in the day. I say back in the day, 2011 feels like weird to call back in the day, but it is just 10 years ago, 11 years ago. This was a much more prevalent thing that people talked about because of just the way, I think just the landscape of games at the time. Because this would be like, okay, I go to the store, I pick up Warhammer 40k Space Marine for, I don't know how much this retailed for, let's say $60, like a lot of games back then, or most games back then. Because that's the other part, is that pricing was very rigid. It's like you buy a game and it's $60, maybe 30, maybe 40 or something like that. But in most cases, like $60. Pony up. There's a lot of people who just straight up, like, they own a console, they have this was before Steam was super big, they own a console, they go to the store, they get a new game maybe like once every few months, once every couple of every 2 months or something like that, they might get a new game. And they play it very casually. I don't know if that's the right word, but like you play your games off and on. The availability, there were just fewer options for things to play. Like free to play was not in style at the time. Renting games was still kind of a thing, but for most people, it's like I buy a game for $60. This is my game for the next maybe a few months. So developers would look at this kind of like consumer situation, and they would go, okay, we need to add something that actually gives this game like some extra value. They're designing this for the player who is going to maybe have this game for a while and might just have to replay it, you know? So games would just throw in like collectibles and stuff. Just like random collectibles. And this was a considered like a net positive, or I don't know, like a universally considered like a positive thing. And I don't think that this is like a net negative thing or something like that. But it's just really funny that like people would bring this up as almost like a bullet, like a bullet point or like a check mark thing. Like, does it have what adds replay factor? Oh, there's collectibles, and you might miss collectibles on your first run through the game, so you'll have to go back and replay it so that you can find all the audio logs. And it's really funny because this is like, I feel like a very quaint system, or a very quaint idea, but this was just like a reality of how games were designed and what they had to think about back then. I just found that very, amusing, I think is the right word. I don't mind it. I like having these little collectibles you can find around. I like getting some kind of a reward for exploring the world, but it's very much like a product of its time in that sense. I guess while we're talking about things that are products of its time in this game, it's a weird way to phrase it. Lots of hidden stealthy loading screens. Lots of sections where it's like, oh, we got to go up an elevator, and the doors close, and then the lift goes up, and like now we're here. You know, it's like about like a 10-second thing, and it's like, okay, well we're waiting for a loading screen, basically. You know, just sections where you got to hold up a bit. You got to wait or slow down. I actually kind of want to talk about I'll talk about the gameplay first. Because I've been talking a lot about all these little exterior funny little things. The gameplay is very solid. They knew what they were making, and they knew what limitations they had. This is made by Relic. What other stuff did Relic make? I know their name. I feel like I'm gonna see what they made, and I'm gonna be like, Age of Empires, Company of Heroes, Homeworld, couple Warhammer 40k. Oh, Dawn of War. Impossible Creatures. Yeah, this is not like a terribly large studio with a ton of like resources to make a AAA game. They did have like, you know, some experience. Looks like they mainly specialize in sim games, like strategy sim games, and shooters, which is kind of a funny match. But they knew what they had and what they had to do, and they scaled the project very appropriately. This is an 8-hour game. Literally, it took me on Steam 8.5 hours, and some of that was filled up with me just like I made food at one point. I beat this in 2 sittings. I made food. I got up and like took a little walk around and like paused the game. So a little bit of that is padded out. Let's say it's a roughly 8-hour game. You can beat it in 2 or 3 sittings. And for that, they try to make the experience as enjoyable as possible. So first of all, this is a third-person shooter, and the shooting feels good. The weapons have this the weapons feel really good. And that's owing to like the mainly honestly like the sound design and the visual feedback. Like there's a sniper rifle in this game. It's like a stalker bolter. It's like a physical like bullet sniper rifle, and when you like zoom in and shoot, it's like I'm not doing a great job of like capturing what that sounds like, but it's this just great crunchy snappy like things shattering sound, you know. And then when you hit enemies, it just there'll just be like a big burst of a little burst of blood, and then if it's a kill, it's a big burst. You get some laser weapons, and if you like headshot an enemy or just like overkill them, they will literally just disintegrate. And it's like, yeah, you scope over an enemy, headshot them, and they just vanish from existence. It's really funny. And it feels good, and the sound effect, just you get like a straight beam of just laser fire, just this bright orange laser beam, and this like sound effect, and there's a bunch of smoke left over from where your shot landed. It's very, very satisfying. Even like the workhorse weapon of the game, so to speak, the one you're going to be leaning on a lot is your it's called like a bolter. It's essentially like a machine gun. It's the 40K version of like a machine gun, and it fires exploding rounds because it's 40K. 40K's got like some crazy weapons. Like there's guns that shoot like shurikens and shit. It's like it's very heavy metal in that sense. And the game does a good job for how short it is. It does a good job of like giving you a good all-round like Warhammer experience. Like I'm trying to describe it without saying it makes you feel like a Space Marine. It really makes you feel like a Warhammer 40K Space Marine. But I would be lying if I said that it doesn't go a long way to convey a lot of the power of being a Space Marine. Like they're these giant genetically engineered freaks in even bigger power armor with giant shoulder armor and shoulder not pads, yeah, just like shoulder plates, and like when they walk the ground trembles, and when they punch shit it just and they're super strong. Like they're so big they can't even like jump. You have like a roll instead of a jump. Speaking about the weaponry, it also definitely tries to like cycle you through. It gives you like a tour of the Space Marine kind of arsenal. You get like the bullet-based weapons that all have like, you know, stalker with the bolter with like the exploding rounds. You get like the snipers. You get a crazy like automatic shotgun, basically. It's like a short-range machine gun with insane like spread. You get some plasma weapons that just shoot big energy balls that explode. You get some great like nice like series of melee weapons. You start off with a really basic just combat knife. It has like a decent little combo system, or just like multiple moves you can do out of melee, with melee strikes and then like stun strikes. You can do like attack, stun, and every weapon, or like you like attack. You can do like stun. You can do like attack then stun. You can do attack stun. And these are all like different kind of combos that give you, every weapon actually has different moves for it. There's a lot of really nice, again, you know, we were talking about attention to detail, nice little attention to detail with the little animations and that everything has. Extra like unique animations that different weapons have. especially like the melees. When you, I should have written some of this down. There was just a couple things that I was just impressed with. I really like how, so when you sprint, when you're talking about like the weight of a space marine, of like how heavy your character is, when you sprint and you come to an abrupt stop, you actually have like a momentum that keeps going, and you keep your character like almost stumbles forward like a few paces while he's like slows himself down. Like you just keep up this momentum. You have the traction or like friction almost. Like almost like Mario. Like you land, and you do like a running jump in Mario. And then you land and you keep walking like a few like little like steps, little like mini steps. It's got that. This game does something similar to that. You'll come to like a skidding halt. You'll keep moving forward a few paces before you totally stop. And it's just one of those things that I appreciate. The shooting in general is like, yeah, I guess now I can talk about the way the game is structured, like the level design and all that, because so like on a basic level the combat feels pretty good. You have melee attacks that you can like stun enemies. I should talk about before I move on to the level design. Okay, so this game has a couple like extra little mechanics. One of them is called Fury, which is just a meter that builds up as you melee stuff and kill enemies. And when it's full, you can go into Fury mode and like you heal and all your attacks heal you. And it's just like, fuck it, I'm going sicko mode. It has the other, I would say, important mechanic is executions. So this game uses a Halo-style health system where you have a regenerating shield and non-regenerating health underneath that. The only way to regenerate your health is to do an execution. So by stunning enemies with your like melee stun, which is the only way to stun enemies, they will which is not guaranteed. Enemies have to be, I think like some enemies, excuse me, I'm not sure exactly how it works. It seemed like some enemies could only be stunned after they had some health taken off. It seemed like some could not be stunned at all. Like there's like little like shit goblins and stuff like that, like the little goblinos, and they just straight up die in one hit. So like you cannot do the execute on them. So they'll get like, but the larger enemies will get stunned, and then you can go up to them and press E, and they'll have like a little indicator around them that you can execute them. You can press E, and then you will do a canned animation with your melee weapon. It's basically a glory kill from Doom and like from the new Doom games. It's literally like the glory kill system from Doom, but worse, and for one very particular reason. So number one, the animations are fun. The animations are cool. Throwing an orc down, smashing his head with a hammer. Let's go. I do love psychopathy. I do love violent alien racism. Cool, right? Whatever. It doesn't feel like it goes on for too long. It's good. There's a nice like slowdown. That's another thing this game does well, is big moments, like big attacks when you do like a full melee combo. The last one will have a big slowdown as all the enemies like fly away. Big slowdown on the like moment where you actually get the health back when the execution's done. Here's the problem. You can take damage during the execution animation. And you can die during the execution animation. You are locked into it until either you die or it's done. And this game likes to put you in very hectic situations where there's a lot of enemies swarming around and shooting at you or slashing you and like ganging up on you. And it's just it's kind of annoying. The fun thing about Doom's combat, the new Dooms, and why the glory kill system works so well in there is that it rewards aggression. Is that it rewards you for, it's like, okay, what's the fantasy of, being the Doom guy? It's like you want to go in, you want to kill a bunch of demons, and you just want to be this like demon slaying monster. And the glory kill system is so good for that because it rewards you for playing aggressively. And it makes it so that if you play well and you know like how to which enemies to focus down first, so you can get some glory kills, so you can kind of like manage your health loss with the health you'll gain back from the glory kill. Managing all that stuff is fun, and it's like by doing and getting better at it, you're getting better at the game. It's helping you do more demon killing. This actually, in a weird way, accomplishes sort of the opposite, because I found myself, if I got low on health, like if my shields got broken and then I took some damage to my health, I would then start retreating. I would retreat back and wait. I would run away and then wait for my shield to recharge, and then I would go in and try to see if I could stun an enemy to execute them. Because then, if I took some hits, it probably wouldn't break my shield, and I would be just safer. So it actually accomplishes the opposite of what I think they were trying to do? I don't know. Because immediately what that reads to me is like, oh, this is a mechanic that rewards aggression. It rewards you getting in and being a crazy... Like, this game has the fury meter, right? Like, that's something that 100% wants you to get in, and... Because the fury comes back really fast. Like, it fills back really quickly after you've popped it. Like, that's a mechanic that is encouraging you to go in and get aggressive and do a bunch of damage because you're going to heal it back. The execution mechanic is this weird... You would think it's in line with that, but it almost like goes against the fury system or the fury mechanic, because you end up having to retreat because playing aggressively will then get you... And going for executions will then get you killed. And it's just... It kind of interrupts the flow of gameplay from what I think they might have intended. I can't read into what the developers intended, but it felt like... So take this with a grain of salt. I don't like to read into people's intentions with everything, but it felt like they... Man, you could quote me on I don't like to read people's intentions and fucking bring up like 100 things of where I'm a hypocrite with that. But like, what I'm saying is I don't know for sure. But it seems like the part of the intent with the game was, again, to like make you feel like a space marine. And part of that is space marines are these giant like death machines, right? Like they're these big genetically engineered super soldiers who go in and they just slay the fuck out of aliens and demons. And they're super racist towards non-humans. Oh, I love Warhammer. Like that's the like, they aren't invulnerable, and especially when you go up against an enemy that's you're on your level, so to speak. But part of it is like you want to get in and you want to rip and tear like Doom. And it's kind of annoying to have this mechanic where, because there's no other way to regain health. There's no other way. It's only through executions or through reloading a checkpoint / advancing in the story to a new chapter, at which point your health will be reset. Yeah, it's easily the worst part of the game. Is just the execution mechanic. It feels like it's not all the way there. If you could either like during the animation, if you didn't take damage or if you couldn't die, then I think you would at least be better. But as it is in the game, it ends up just kind of being almost like a nuisance that you have to work with, is the execution mechanic if you want to not die. Because it being low on health, as opposed to in Doom, where being low on health means I need to get more aggressive, I have to go in more. Being low on health is I have to hang back and play safe. And maybe that's what they wanted, but it felt a little incongruous with like the Fury mechanic, for instance. Maybe in like a perfect world, those two things should have been integrated into one system. Or like if you get an execution during Fury, it like you can't take damage or something like that. Some kind of interaction between those two. But yeah, what do I want to talk about? The structure. Okay, so now I've gotten like the basic combat out of the way. The game is extremely linear. It is literally just like you land, you go from point A to point B to point C. And that is something that, when I talk about being of its time, that's like something that games used to be a lot more linear in that sense. And this one, we've gotten away from that because mainly just because of like, honestly, I think just hardware limitations have been lifted. You know, developers they have like the power to make bigger worlds and stuff like that, bigger, more detailed worlds. And it's almost like you get the impression from some people that a linear game is worse for some reason. Oh, I want it to be open. This game being like I would call it hyperlinear is not. It's not like a negative inherently. I mean, there's games where them being open world is a detriment. If I'm being honest. What being so linear allows them to do is make a very carefully planned and structured experience for the player. So one thing that I noted, that it's a little, I don't know how much of it was like intentionally designed, but the game has a very good pacing to it. And by that I mean like a good like moment to moment pacing. Like as I meant, like the whole plot basically unfolds over the course of one day of in-game time. Basically, like you land, what is it? I don't remember. You kind of like land during the daytime, and then when you come out, like near the end, it's kind of like sunrise. So things are like going and going and going. There were several points. The game, it's constantly driving you to the next objective. We're not taking a break. Like a real. There are. How do I say this? There's not really moments where the game just stops and you can just kind of like do side things, or there's like a hub that you can hang around, or anything really like that. There's a constant sense of like urgency that is only sometimes broken up with segments of just kind of walking. There is a little bit of like just walking, and you could call that a detriment. You could. There is like it is kind of transparent in that it's like shepherding you between arenas that are with like hallways in between them. That's essentially the structure of the game. It is kind of transparent in what it's doing in that way. But you could also argue, and I sort of agree with this, that downtime is kind of necessary because the gameplay is pretty singular. It's pretty like, it's shooting. You're shooting. You're shooting enemies. And to have that kind of broken up with, it's kind of like these pacing breaks, essentially. Like, we're going to take a quick, like a minute of downtime of walking from point A to point B, and the characters are going to have a conversation. And what I found really interesting, and I wonder if this was intentional, but so when you find these audio logs, you can either just like collect them and listen to them in like a pause menu, or you can like hold down the button to interact, and it will play it as you'll collect it, and it will start playing as you're walking. And there were a lot of segments where it felt like you're in one of these little in-between zones of just walking, and you find like an audio log, or I would find an audio log, and I'd be listening to it as I was going because I didn't feel like pausing the game. And it felt like, almost like it was timed out specifically so that by the time you got to like the next arena or around there, the log would be done playing, and you would have maybe like 5 more seconds of walking, and then you'd get to the combat zone, basically. I don't know if that was intentional. It feels like it was so common, and maybe this was just me, because I also didn't like sprint all the time. But that's like the experience that I had. And it had a very, almost like a very well planned feeling to it. It felt like a lot of the segments and set pieces and moments were very like well scripted. Like they were like, okay, this is going to be a very limited scope game, so let's take the opportunity to make sure that what the player is doing is, number one, satisfying on a gameplay level, and two, good in the sense that it's like, how do I say it? Like, it's well thought out. We can go the extra, even though it's a small scope game, we can go the extra mile to make that moment. If we're gonna be linear, we're gonna be good linear, I guess. And yeah. So that's literally just how the game is very. It's not like I think it's interesting to talk about, because Deus Ex was difficult to talk about because I think honestly Deus Ex being hard to talk about is not because it's boring or anything. It's just Deus Ex is one of those games where it's like you just kind of have to play it. That's probably why it's got such a cult following, because it's one of those games where it's like you just got to play it. Like you just have to experience it and you'll get it. Like, it's hard to talk about that game to someone necessarily who like hasn't played it before. I think I haven't had the chance to talk to anyone else about Deus Ex since I've played it, but Space Marine is almost the opposite, where I find like a lot of things about it on like a meta level are very interesting. There are parts, speaking to the idea that it wants to give you that feeling of that Space Marine experience. It's so hard to say, like, because it's such a meme now of like it makes you feel like so and so, but that's what this game is going for. And honestly, what's funny is I saw this post on, what was it, I think Game Design or something like that, r/Game Design, and it was about this specific design document they saw that was used in like some Japanese studio. I don't remember which one. Don't quote me on this. But the first line of every single one of their design documents was to give... It would be something like, the purpose of this game is to give the experience... it's like to impart the feeling of or experience of fill in the blank, whatever. That was like the first line that studio used for all their games. It's like, when you play this game, before we even talk about story, before we talk about gameplay, this game is supposed to make you feel like something, or it's supposed to make you feel a specific emotion, right? Like of Mice and Sand. I'm going to reference that game. Of Mice and Sand. When I talk about games, like, it feels like someone had a really cool idea and they just made that game. I can imagine, like, if I was to do that for Of Mice and Sand, I would say, like, to give the experience of excuse me, to give the experience of commanding a small a small vessel of characters, like being the captain of and manager of like a small vessel of characters. And then from there, it goes into like, oh, it's this mice on like a little sand barge, and you build rooms and things like that. But ultimately, the appeal of that game is you are like the manager. You're managing this little vehicle. You're building it up. You're collecting resources. You're getting your little mice crewmates. You're assigning them jobs and tasks and things like that. It's like a leadership simulator, almost like a leadership type of game. Darkest Dungeon would be like to like give the impart the feeling of hopelessness or going up against incredible odds. Yeah, like that. I think that would be that's a good summary of Darkest Dungeon. Like, what does it make you feel? And even if you don't like RPGs or things with RPG elements or something like that, if that interests you, like, I think that's a good like attractor. So Space Marine is like would be to impart the feeling of being a Space Marine from the 40K universe. And that is what they are trying to do. Whereas one of the strategy games would be like, I don't know, to impart the feeling of being a commander. Experience of being a commander of an army in the 40K universe. Something like that. So there's like sections. Some of my favorite sections from this game are where you get this jetpack. And the jetpack sections are basically like, just be overpowered. So, you only get it for specific sections. I was kind of bummed you don't get it the whole game, but it sort of makes sense because it's so fun, but it would be a little much to have it the entire game, I think. So it's this jetpack that basically your dodge button, which is space on the keyboard by default, the dodge button becomes a jump button, essentially. So you take off in the jetpack super high. You can like hold it down and to go higher. You take off super high and you float around. You can float around as you're like dropping down, but you get like a little target reticle and you can right click to dive bomb an area below you. And when you dive bomb, it's like this, wow, it's this like big slow motion, it's like this big explosion as you land, or like a big burst of like light and energy. Enemies get flung backwards, and then you just start ripping into them with like your melee or something. It's such a cool feeling. And the first time they give it to you, it's in a section where you're in like this, you're walking through the city, and there's like very, very distinct high and low ground. Like the high ground is very high up, and you get the jetpack, and you just get to like fly up there. There's enemies shooting down at you, and then you fly up. You get to ground, like airstrike them or dive bomb them, and you start ripping into them. It's really fun. There's like an extended sequence where you're just like going to town in this little arena with one of these jetpacks. Yeah, I guess, did I mention, I should mention that you get weapons really often, and I think that was like part of their, making up for the length of the game is that they try to keep things pretty fresh. So like, you know, that section with the jetpack that comes into like just spice, give you a little spice before you go back to the regular shooting, and they do that a couple times. You're getting guns consistently, and you can only carry 4 guns at a time. Some of them get permanent upgrades, like your pistol. Your pistol gets a permanent upgrade, but other ones, your pistol and your bolter, so your machine gun, those will get permanent upgrades, and those just kind of stay, and they basically keep filling the same function. The 3rd and 4th slot, which are, you can only carry 4 weapons at a time, 4 guns at a time, I should say, are there's a couple different weapons that you can switch out when the game chooses to give it to you. This game gives you like ammo and extra grenades and options to like switch weapons pretty regularly. Pretty frequently you'll come across these like little ammo supply zones, or just little areas with boxes of ammo and some weapons that you can choose to switch out. And the weapons are, I eventually found a loadout that I really liked, but what was sort of annoying to me is that there's a bit of like overlap with the weapons. Because, okay, so weapons are specifically, they only go in one slot. So they'll only go in like for instance, your 3rd or 4th slot. So, for instance, you get this cool sniper, like bullet weapon that goes in the 3rd slot. And then the 4th weapon you get is like a grenade launcher. Later on, you can choose to... So later on, you can change the... You get... it's basically like a laser shotgun in your 4th slot. And then the game will also give you I think I mentioned it before, but it's that like basically a short range machine gun or an automatic shotgun, take your pick. That one goes in the 3rd slot. You cannot change it. So you kind of have to make a decision. Do I want to have 2 close range shotgun type weapons, or do I want to have 1 long range weapon that might not be quite as strong, because you get the it's like there's, do you? I don't know. I can't make super strong. I've only played the game once, so I can't say exactly which weapons are stronger or weaker. But basically, the game is, there's points where if you took the weapons that the game was giving you, they would overlap in function in a way that I didn't find it to be a very interesting choice, and I just kind of ended up sticking with the loadout that I liked, which was I had the laser shotgun and the laser sniper, and that did me just fine the whole game, or for most of the game. Yeah. Presentation-wise, I really enjoy... This game has it starts off with it's going for a very filmic soundtrack, so the opening has a very nice kind of orchestral thing going on. Most of the music is kind of forgettable, but it's overall pretty decent. I think I mentioned before, the sound design is wonderful. Just like the guns feel great. There's very clear sound effect for when you have reloaded your gun, which is nice. I don't have to like take my eye off of the action to make sure that I'm done reloading. The enemies, the voice lines get a little old. They call Space Marine. Hey, the Space Marines. It's basically that over and over and over again. It's not the worst thing in the world. The game's only 8 hours, and it's not super frequent, so it's not too bad. Overall, the voice acting is quite good, I have to say. And then I really want to talk about the visuals in terms of the aesthetics. So, one of the things that is so appealing, why this game is actually pretty popular with Warhammer fans, is that you just want to be in this world. If I'm being honest, I just want a game where you can walk around in these crazy locations. And this game delivers really well on that. It definitely shows off the unique part of 40K's kind of sci-fi, which is because it's taking place on an Imperial Forge world. So there's a couple things going on. Like number one, this is the Empire. So it's got this kind of mix of Gothic architecture with a little bit of like Roman styles with like pillars and things like that. And it's sci-fi, right? So because it's a forge world, the idea is it's basically a gigantic city-sized factory for weapons of war that is extends into the underground and all that. So it's run by these tech priests. So it's like a factory because technology in 40K is kind of like a holy secret, sort of. Like the secrets of technology are considered like divine information or holy information. So you're walking around this place, and it's a city, but it's also a factory. And it's also because people live there, right? And it's also kind of like a church, or it's like a holy place. It's a basilica or something like that. So some giant cathedral-like structures. There's a great sense of scale where you're just looking at these gigantic buildings that are towering around you. Even though the Space Marines are like huge compared to regular humans, you feel small, you feel totally dwarfed by these massive structures. Like when you see the Titan, I didn't even realize what I was looking at, because you get on like near like the ground level, or like near like where its like feet are, and then you like walk up some stairs, and I swing around the stairs onto like a higher platform, and I get to like see the whole thing, and I'm like, holy shit, that's huge! It's gigantic. Just these like giant buildings with like big statues, and the like tech priest insignia, which is like a skull with gears around it, and it's just cool. There's tons of these Gothic archways, and it's this whole factory made of stone and steel and like marble and all these things. It even when it gets into these more like going through caves and tunnels and underground parts of the factory, the manufactorum, there's still lots of details to remind you that you are in the Warhammer universe. There's just these little touches of Gothic architecture and skulls and things like that. And it's really cool. I gotta be honest. Like, when I say it's a good Warhammer game, or even a great Warhammer game, I think that's where that comes from, is that it does these things in a way that actually makes you feel like you're sort of immersed in this world, As a game on itself, I don't know how much enjoyment you might get out of it if you're not a Warhammer fan. I think you could probably, I mean, for how short it is, you could probably like fill an afternoon or two with playing it. It's definitely a short and sweet experience with some very solid gameplay, maybe above average even. Very cool presentation. Solid story, serviceable story, I'll say. And yeah, I mean, maybe it would help a little bit to like brush up on Warhammer lore. I don't know. All you would have to know to go into this game is space, far future, war, space marines. They are humans. They fight aliens for the Emperor. Glory to the Emperor. Yeah, it's not terribly complicated. Warhammer lore is very complicated, but the basics I think you can grasp. Yeah, I mean, so I've always heard that this game was very well liked in the Warhammer community, and now I get why. And it was what made me, I mean, the reason that my magnets are partially broken is because I slammed them on the ground. I was so excited that I saw Space Marine 2 at, what was it? What was that event? The Game Awards, that was what it was at. The Game Trailers Awards. The Game Trailers plus some awards. That's what it should be called. I was excited for that because I was like, oh, cool, we're going to get like a new Warhammer game that's not a strategy game where you get to like walk around these environments and stuff like that and be in the world. I was really excited for that. Also, I was just very surprised that game, first of all, that it was happening, second, that it was being announced on that stage. And honestly, I'm still excited for Space Marine 2, but I'm more curious now than ever, because Space Marine 1 is such a product of its time. Like, it's so 7th gen. It's crazy. This is a third-person shooter that came out in 2011. Like, it's so much that. Excuse me. And we're so far removed from many of the tropes that kind of pervade it that I'm so curious as to what the sequel will look like. It might be one of the biggest like caverns, or not caverns, canyons in style between an original and a sequel. Because, I mean, to be honest, a lot of the things in Warhammer, in Space Marine 1 are not, they're very tropey in the sense that, like, do you need a turret? I don't think we're going to be doing turret sections, final boss QTEs. I don't think we're going to be doing that in Space Marine 2. There's just so many things that are like, yeah, the industry kind of grew out of this. We can leave it behind. It's not the worst thing in the world. We can leave it behind. And it might be like super weird because we haven't seen any gameplay or anything. Maybe a little bit of gameplay. I'd have to go back and check out the trailer again, but because it was mostly just pre-rendered cinematic. It maybe they could stick with the linear. They could honestly do anything with the sequel. It's been so long. The industry has matured so much in terms of like what's in and what kind of ideas are sort of like out of style, and maybe for good reason, that I don't know, maybe it'll be very of this time. Maybe it'll be a very I guess we're 9th gen now. Maybe it'll be a very 9th gen shooter, Either way, I'm looking forward to it. As long as it's Relic again, isn't it? It's Relic. It's Space Marine 2. Focus Entertainment. Okay. Oh, there was news about it an hour ago. What? Oh, there's new footage. What the hell? Wait, was this the... Did they just do this from the, Oh, let's see, the skulls. What kind of new trailer? I didn't even see this. What the fuck? I didn't even know there was news about the fucking Skulls... Warhammer Skulls show. They have their own show now. Or they have like their own... Warhammer games now have their own event. Because there's so many. New screenshots. Wow, this game looks cool. This game looks good. There's a giant statue that's like built into this wall that is a big like knight that's a skeleton with a glowing red cyborg eye and it's holding a sword. Yeah, this is this is certainly a Warhammer game. I guess I can watch this live reaction. We got a live reaction. I don't feel like setting up the whole thing. Tim Willits. Wait, what the fuck? Why do I remember this guy? Tim Willits. Tim Willits. Saber Interactive. Oh, he worked on Quake. Right? Director of 3D Realms. Tim Willits. Lead designer on Doom 3, executive producer Quake 4, creative director on Rage and Quake Live. He's the only id Software employee who has been to every single QuakeCon. Huh. Yeah, okay. Ultimate. Yeah, I knew. Okay, yeah, he was on. He joined. He did some work at id for. He started on Ultimate Doom. He did some stuff in for like episode 4, the Master Levels, Strife, Quake, Hexen. Yeah, okay, this was like an id guy. Okay, that's so cool. That's so cool. They got a bunch of like models and stuff that they're showing off. Show some gameplay. Gosh darn it. I don't feel like setting up the thing to actually I have to like set up a program and get it running and change a bunch of stuff with my audio like tracks to get it to record desktop audio in Audacity. So you're just gonna have to put up with me talking about this trailer. Is there any gameplay or are they just talking about figurines? This is pretty much just a behind the scenes. Yep. Are these Primaris Marines? Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, so... I don't think there's anything, like, super new in here. There's still, Oh, there's gameplay. Yep, they got the... They got the shooting. They got the landing down on a jetpack. They got the running. They got tearing through stuff with the chain sword. Yeah, so it looks hype. I don't know. I'm excited. It looks like an actual, like it's got some budget and the graphics look good. If it's super linear, hopefully it'll at least be fun and solid like the original. Yeah. Holy shit, I went for 2 hours and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about today. That's got to be on the bingo card. I'm going to make one eventually. I swear to God. Maybe for the... Maybe for the anniversary. Yeah, so I'm going to wrap it up there. Space Marine, good. Good game. Especially as a Warhammer game. Yeah, so if you've been listening this far, thank you so much for listening. If you have a question, be sure to leave it down in the comments below. And I will definitely get to it next time. Or, Well, let's see. I was thinking about doing a live episode next time. I think I mentioned that before, but I'll see how that works out. I want to do that. And hey, even if we don't get any viewer interaction, I will at least just be rambling live. And maybe I'll have some of my friends call in. Yeah, leave a question down in the comments below, and I'll get to it next time. Maybe live. And, yeah. Good. Goodbye.